time on Low Boost, we're back in the Las Vegas desert and we're gonna drive and review this Audi R8 V10 Spider.
I'm gonna give you my honest opinion, if it's worth the money, and if you should get one yourself.
You can hear that. It's loud. There's one loop that I love to do. I love to go out to the Hoover Dam, then through Lake Mead State Park, and then up to the Valley of Fire. It's one of the best drives you could make renting a car out in Vegas, and we're gonna do that drive today. I'm really gonna test this R8 out to see if it's something that's really worthwhile for the money. A lot of guys do your typical car review of one of these, and it'll tell you all of the standard features and how many buttons it has and compartments and all that stuff. But I try to do these reviews as an actual car enthusiast, and what a car enthusiast would do when they bought one of these, which is probably some wheels, maybe some aftermarket carbon fiber bits, some type of tune, full bolt-on, exhaust, intake. So I try to look at it through an enthusiast size. So you get a car that has 525 horsepower, you can increase that to 600 with minimal cost and effort. You could slap some really nice wheels on this. You could put a body kit on it. You could get facelift stuff you can put on it. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do to these cars that I try to showcase, and this is a really great example. Wide body kit, bigger wheels, full tune. There's a ton of carbon fiber bits inside of this thing. It's a good example of what an enthusiast might want to do. Now, personally, I don't love the wrap of this car. I actually like the original color that it had, but you know, they wrapped it before I came out here. But it still doesn't look bad. I still like the color, but it if it was all blue and not without the exposed carbon fiber, that'd be a little bit more my style. But it's still cool nonetheless. People are taking pictures of me everywhere we go. They're looking around at the car. So it is definitely a head turner. And I know a lot of people that are watching this right now are thinking, well, is it worth it to spend the extra money to get a newer R8 with the facelift that has the Huracan engine in it with over 600 horsepower? And it's a yes and no question.
For reference, I very easily found this on autotrader.com. 2012 R8 5.2 coupe with a manual transmission was $92,000. And there was a bunch of them for less than 100. And if I was going to get one, I would want the coupe and the manual. So this is exactly how I would want it. Our very first stop today is going to be down at the Hoover Dam, which isn't that far away from the Las Vegas Strip.
I usually make my first stop here at the Hoover Dam because it's got some breathtaking views and a lot of history, and it's a really great place to get a ton of views here. I'll show you guys a little bit of it. Yeah, I like to actually go up to the top where there's not a whole lot of people. So the 2011 Audi R8 V10 Spider makes 525 horsepower and I think 391 pound-feet of torque. The 525 horsepower comes at like 8,000 RPM though, so you really got to wind it out to really feel that. But the 400 pound-feet of torque does still give you a decent punch down low. Although the horsepower rating of the R8 V10 is 525, a lot of people that have actually strapped this thing to a dyno has found that it makes a little bit less than 450 horsepower to the wheels, which is a significant drop. It'll do 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds, and most people that reviewed this car said it did a 12-second quarter mile at 119 miles an hour. The V8 version was like mid to high 12s at like 113 miles an hour, and if you look at this comparatively to the new Huracan-based R8 V10s, those are well in the 11s at like 127 miles an hour. But if you just did the basic tune on this thing, it will bump the horsepower up to about 600, and at that point you're probably close to what you would get with the Huracan. However, I think they're kind of great in the middle ground is you can't get a manual with the newer Huracan based V10s, you can with this. So if you were to get a manual transmission version of this with the tune and the really cool exhaust, I think it's a great trade-off between getting the car that's probably almost twice as expensive as this, but still having to row gears, which in my opinion is my favorite thing to do. All right, so next up on the trip, we're gonna head down to Lake Mead, go through the park there, and then we will hit what is one of the best stretches of roads to drive on our way up to the Valley of Fire State Park. Look at that view. Beautiful. I think if you're gonna spend less than $100,000 on a car, there's a number of different options that you could look at, whether it's new or used. But I think you could get a well option 991, 911, or a base-ish model 992, 911 for right around that money, as well as a G80 M3, or maybe a used Z06 Corvette, which has a little bit more of an exotic factor to it. But I think this car is kind of different from them because it looks different. Like a G80, performance-wise, probably outperforms this in almost any way you want to put it. It doesn't look like this. So if you want a car that looks like this, has that exotic look, people looking at you everywhere you go, it's not really those cars. It's this, probably a Ferrari F430 or a Lamborghini Gallardo. Which, in my opinion, this is very similar to. I've sat in a Gallardo. I can't. It's a lot more cramped than this car. This car feels bigger, if that makes sense. A lot more headroom, a lot more leg room. The car just feels bigger. So I feel like that's kind of the category that you'd be looking at. And if you don't really care about the V10 sound, you could easily get a same car like this, but in a V8 for probably $20,000 or $30,000 less. You still get the same looks. So, it's all subjective and depends on what you really want. The shifts aren't as fast and as crisp as you would get with, let's say, like the dual clutch that's in the newer ones. But that little hesitation you may get upset with.
Some of the other cars in the same price range as this that you might want to consider would be like the AMG GTS, or a Cayman GT4, or a McLaren MP4-12C, which I think is pretty similar to this in terms of price and performance. If you're just looking for raw power, those do have an ability to make a lot more power because they are twin turbocharged V8s, and you could really open them up with a tune. With the added power from the exhaust, tune, and intake, it definitely is blisteringly fast, and if you're not careful, this thing will try to kill you if you let it. Even with the traction control on and everything, it is an antiquated traction control, and it definitely will let you make a mistake if you make one. Unlike some newer systems, which they just really won't let you crash the car even if you're trying to. So I can only imagine how raw of a driving experience this would be if it was a stick shift, and I really wish that it was, because I would have really liked to feel that, because I don't necessarily love the video game style traction control and all of that stuff that doesn't really let you get out of sorts. It really kind of diminishes the fun factor of driving a car itself with all of those grannies that you can have on the car.
The pros of buying a supercar like this that's older is that you get it at a bargain, quote unquote, price under $100,000. But the cons are you are dealing with an antiquated interior in terms of technology and functionality. But that said, I don't think people are buying this car because it has Apple CarPlay. You're buying this car because it can play, and it looks like nothing else out there. You're going to have people staring at you everywhere you go, taking pictures and videos, because it sounds and looks out of this world. It really has a 10 out of 10 smile factor. Every single time I stomped on the gas pedal and heard that V10 engine roar, it just put a smile on my face and I couldn't help but giggle. And rolling the window down behind you made it even louder.
The car's already loud as it is because this has an aftermarket exhaust, but I roll this window down and It's just a V10 symphony behind me. Doesn't that sound glorious? I don't know if it's gonna pick up on the microphone, but that's pretty cool. You can put the window back up. Pretty simple. When the mountains start turning red, that's when you know you're close to the Valley of Fire.
If you're looking for a great way to support our channel, check out lowboostfilms.com. I have a bunch of different merchandise on there, from hats, hoodies, t-shirts, you name it, as well as a bunch of tools and car parts that I've reviewed on the channel that I know work well, on sale for a good price. So make sure you check out lowboostfilms.com.
All right, so we made it to the Valley of Fire. I mean, look at this place. They call it the Valley of Fire for a reason. Just take a look at everything behind me. It is an awesome drive to come out here. I try to do this every single time that I come to Las Vegas because the drive and the sights are just out of this world. Literally, I feel like I'm on Mars right now. I think after spending a good deal of time in this car, it's given me a couple of realizations. Yeah, is there a faster version of this car out right now? Yup. If you want one, you're gonna pay for it. And you know, if you're only looking for the fastest thing you can afford for whatever amount of money that you are trying to spend, like if it's not a Corvette, what are you doing? Because that is the cheat code for it. But if you have a budget of $100,000 or less and you're trying to buy a supercar or an exotic car that looks like nothing else on the road, this is the car you might want to get. I really don't know if there's another car out there that can do what this does for the price point that you can get one of these at, that has a unique exotic look and sound to it. I mean, we're talking mid-engine, V10, supercar. There's not a whole lot of those out there. This car is a really good example of what you can do if you want to modify it. The wide body kit on this thing, the tune, the exhaust, the seats inside, the steering wheel really kind of changes how this car looks and kind of sets it apart from other R8s. And you could put all that money into this car and still be a lot less than you would for a newer version of the R8. The other thing that you could do to these, and you know, it's obviously an expense, but VF Racing makes a supercharger for this that will increase the output to close to 800 horsepower, which is obviously a huge expenditure to do, but it really would change the total look out of this car completely. This thing is already bananas fast as it is, and it would be even more insane if you actually slap one of those superchargers on it. The downside of why I wouldn't get one of these with the Spider is the engine compartment on this car is beautiful, and with the Spider you don't get to see it. It's covered. You have to actually get the coupe to actually get the exposed glass so you could look inside. And also the convertible, this weighs 3,800 pounds, whereas the coupe weighs 3,600 pounds. So if you're looking to get something as light as possible to be the most nimble car you could get, obviously the coupe would be the way to go in that situation. Final thoughts. Is this what I would personally spend $100,000 on if I was going to spend $100,000 on a car? Honestly, it's not. And that's just a personal preference. I'm still a 911 guy. I'm still a Porsche guy at heart. And if I had $100,000 to spend, I probably would spend it on the nicest 911 that I could get my hands on for that money. But that's just me. I think not everybody loves the look of the 911. I think people want something that's more exotic looking, and this is it. This definitely looks more exotic than a 911. The base 911 doesn't look that much different from a GT3, and unless you know your 911s, most people can't tell. But everybody knows this is not an average Audi. They know this thing is out of this world different, and if that's what you want, you can definitely get that with this. Are there faster cars you can buy for $100,000? Absolutely. Are there better looking cars you could buy for $100,000? I don't know. This thing looks pretty good. I would argue maybe a Ferrari F430 in my mind looks a little better than this just because I like the look of the Ferrari, but this has Audi reliability, which you can have your opinions on it subjectively, but objectively, the maintenance on this thing has to be less than it is on a Ferrari. It just has to. That's just how it goes. So in terms of longevity and, you know, maintenance, this is going to be less no matter how you cut it. I want to hear in the comments what you guys think about this car, because when I was here last year and I reviewed the 992.1 911 base Carrera, and I said that might be one of the best cars you could get for $100,000. This was what a lot of people were telling me they would rather have instead of that car for $100,000. So I want to hear what you guys think. Do you still think this is the best sports car, supercar, exotic car that you can get for $100,000 or less? Let me know in the comments below.
And make sure to hit the subscribe button, because next week I'm going to be reviewing this brand new 2024 Ford Mustang GT. And as always, if you can't wait until next week's video, make sure to check out these videos that I already have ready to go.